Hello, hello, y'all. Okay, so a couple days ago, I was riding in the car with Joe and I was thinking about the dates and I was like, oh my God, this week marks 6 years since my divorce was finalized. And I could not let this momentous divorceversary is that what we're going to call it? Go by without kind of having a fun way for myself to commemorate it with all of y'all. And as you guys can tell from the title, I did that by waking up this morning and I was like, okay, looking back over these last 6 years, what are the things that I never expected coming out of the divorce that, ended up happening that surprised me? And I actually found quite a few of them, right? I'm sure there are many more, but I decided to just pick 7 things to share with you all today on this podcast episode. And I even took some time this morning to start pulling out like old journals, going back and reading kind of where I was at when I was considering as I was going through the separation process, the actual divorce process, which took about 9 months. And y'all, I just could never have dreamed what has happened to me since then. I felt so much compassion reading my past self, like her words, and just realizing how scared she was. She just had no blueprint for what was ahead. I mean, by all accounts, y'all, I was just stepping off a cliff, like out into the unknown with the only thing really guiding me being my gut and my soul calls and this just deep feeling of like, there is something out there for me. I have no clue what it is, where it is, how I'm going to find it. The how was terrifying. No one else I knew had done this, had gotten divorced. I had not seen anybody that had done it well. And coming through all of that now, 6 years later, I'm like, wow, what a freaking epic journey. I think I read that somewhere. Maybe it was one of my community members recently said that like the last few years of her process with considering divorce, with finding herself, she feels like she's lived more in those years than she did in the years before. And boy, do I feel that exact same sentiment about the last 6 years of my life post divorce. Like, I have lived more life in the last 6 years than I did in the 28, I think I was 29 when I got divorced, in the 29 years before that cumulatively. It's been that much of an intense, like amazing journey for me. So, in today's episode, I want to share some of the things that I never expected would happen in those 6 years since I left my marriage. And I'm going to prep y'all. Some of those things on the list are really beautiful. Some are even like miraculous, and some are heartbreaking, and some are difficult. Like, there are definitely things that have happened these last 6 years that I was like, oh, I didn't think that was going to happen. And there will also be some that have just been like wildly unexpected. So you're going to get the whole spectrum really here with this list. I didn't want to just give you guys all like the highs. I definitely wanted you to get some of the lows, because I think it's so important that, I mean, you guys know through the podcast how much I want to emphasize the nuance of this whole process and the importance of understanding that just because you get divorced doesn't mean you don't still take your brain with you and your trauma with you and your CPTSD with you. All of those pieces still come with you. But I'm hoping to give you guys a little bit, even a little bit more of a peek behind the curtain around what life looks like after you end up getting divorced. And, you know, really sharing ahead of time that it totally is not all predictable. There are definitely things I hoped would happen that have, things that I had no idea were going to happen that did. But the biggest piece and takeaway is that whether it goes the way you think it's going to or it doesn't, which it'll be a little bit of both, it can all be powerfully yours. And that is what I've really taken away from the last 6 years, where I'm landing in my celebration of my divorceversary this week, is the last 6 years have been my journey, me living my life, experiencing myself, learning about myself, growing into myself in ways that I never did in the 30 years prior to that. Now, though, before we get in to the episode, I have a tiny bit of housekeeping to give you guys all a heads up on. So, when I moved over to Substack, I told you all that I was going to have my first week be an open, free episode to everybody. That's the first week of the month. And then the next 3 weeks end up getting to be for my paid subscribers on Substack. And y'all, as I'm coming to the end of this month, I was like, oh my God, wait a second. There is a fifth Tuesday. And I don't have that planned. So I sat with that for a little bit and I realized actually this is just such a beautiful gift to me. I've decided that every fifth Tuesday, so if you look at the calendar, those happen every 3 months. And I am actually going to take that week of dropping an episode on the podcast off, y'all. And after a year and a half of podcasting and really over the last 7 to 8 months, like trying to get one out every single week and being pretty consistent with that, this feels really beautiful to allow myself every 3 months to have that fifth Tuesday off. It gives me some time to let my creative juices just get to percolate inside me and even be expressed in other ways. Y'all know I'm kind of excited to do a little bit more writing, especially in the Substack space. So just know that next week and every 3 months on that fifth Tuesday, there will not be a podcast that ends up getting dropped. Depending on how I feel inspired, I may, post something over on Substack. So the next episode that will drop after this one will be coming in on October 7th. And I'm really excited for that one because I will have just returned after our first Stay or Go community retreat. And I will still be pretty high and full off of all of the magic coming off of that. So with that covered, let's get back to our episode and start diving into these 7 surprises that have unfolded for me in the last 6 years. So, number 1 is that I never thought I was going to keep my house. So, let me give you all a little bit of backstory on this one. When I decided to get divorced, y'all, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had been for 10 years. Prior to that, no work experience. Beyond when we lived back in Oakland and my ex-husband and I were first married, I worked for a staging company watering their plants. I worked as an assistant for a glass fusing artist, doing her work there. But no resume, y'all. My resume would have looked like, graduated from college and those 2 jobs and then nothing for the last 10 years of my life. Okay. So no work experience, yes, I had a degree, but no work experience with that degree. And I honestly just had accepted that there was going to be no way, financially, logistically, that I would be able to keep our house and make a monthly mortgage payment on it. Okay. And when I say I'd finally accepted that, let me just be clear, that was a process, y'all. There was a lot of grieving and coaching. My best friend at the time, Kelly, she was going through coach training, her coaching and helping me rewrite that story in my head, right? And as we were rewriting that story and as I was processing through that grief, I started to, look into other options. So I was touring homes that were over in a different school district. Had my finger kind of on the pulse around what are the local rentals. I had even started looking at, okay, if I want to buy this home in this other neighborhood, what do I need? I needed to have 6 months of proven income for them to let me buy a new home. So I was talking to my attorney about negotiating and seeing if we could get him to pay child support ahead of time so that I would be able to move into a home. It was a lot, y'all. Okay. And so by the time we went into mediation, which I believe was in July, so just to give you guys, I love giving you guys time frames to just kind of help you keep digesting and understanding what divorces can look like. I'd filed February 14th of that year. We hadn't been able to get temporary orders until May, where he actually moved out of the home. And then I believe it was in July that we went to mediation. And because we each had our own attorneys, mediation looked like, showing up, me and my attorney are sitting in one room, him and his attorney are sitting in the other room, and we have a mediator going back and forth between the rooms. And we ended up staying in mediation that day for around 11 hours. So it was an entire day of sitting in that room. I mean, y'all, ah, it was a lot. My attorney at her computer, calculating up all the different things. We're working out our custody arrangement. We're trying to work out the settlement on the different, allocation of the assets between the two of us, just getting like piece by piece by piece mediated out that day. And as we're doing it, we're starting, especially towards the end, to get into like a pretty, like the stickiest point, which was that my ex-husband really wanted 50-50 custody. And I just really, prior to that, our parenting style, I was the stay-at-home mom. He worked all the time. I was like, you literally have never had the kids stay overnight with you. Like before we started getting divorced, like that was not a thing. And so I was really pushing for us not doing that. And as we're going through the mediation, it was a lot of me just having to like breathe and trust my attorney, which I had an incredible attorney, although she was very difficult for me because she did not baby me. She was the perfect person for me to have because she saw very clearly that if she at all let me have the reins, I was going to screw myself over. So she just like took the reins, took care of things. But we're getting to the end of the night and we're really stuck on this point, right? And I'm really like, no, I'm not giving in. We're not doing this. And thank goodness, y'all. And this is when I said, this is one of the miraculous moments that came up for me in my journey, was that as we're discussing, all of a sudden, this new idea comes out of nowhere. Literally, y'all. We had never, ever, ever discussed this. This was such a pie in the sky idea that I would never have dreamed it would happen. But the idea gets introduced that like, okay, look, logistically, if you guys don't settle the custody now, he's probably going to keep reopening the custody and bringing you back to court over the years ahead. And, my attorney was really worried for me because she knew I was a stay-at-home mom. I did not have a job. She was so, y'all, I'll talk about it later. She was very like, you need to get work. What are you going to do? But we're sitting there talking, she and me. The mediator is kind of just saying like, look, what I'm picking up on his side is he's going to keep bringing you back to court as many times as it takes for him to get 50-50 custody. And so instead, this idea emerges of like, okay, well, what if we ask him to pay off the house and give you the house in the divorce settlement? And it was like, I remember the feeling in the room becoming electric. All of us like kind of paused and looked at each other and were like, what? Like, and everybody got really excited. Like all of us were like, oh my God, this would be amazing. This would put you up, this would set you up for like such a great position. This would be phenomenal. Like, okay, let's try that, And so we sent that back over. We had a couple more back and forths. And ultimately that evening, it ended in like, we go from this terrific high of, okay, maybe this is going to happen. This would be amazing. Like, talk about best case scenario for me. And then them sending back, like they wanted to go back to the drawing board and start where we'd started like earlier that day. And my attorney had us walk out. Like she didn't even ask my opinion. She just turned to the mediator and was like, we'll see them in court. And the mediator left. She didn't ask my opinion. She didn't ask my choice. Like that was just decided. And I could tell she was frustrated. And we left. And she was like, we'll talk about it later. And I called my sister on the phone bawling because I was like, oh my God, I thought this amazing thing was going to happen. And now it looks like we're going to court. And the next morning, y'all, we received an email from my, at the time, husband's attorney saying they had agreed that the custody was going to be the way we had restructured it to more of like, I think I ended up with like 53 and he had 47%, and that he was going to pay off our home and give it to me in the divorce settlement. And y'all, talk about a moment of total and utter unexpected, like miraculous point in my journey of that experience. And it was absolutely a moment for me of realizing, whoa, I may think I know how things are going to go in this process. I may think how my life's going to unfold.